What's up guys, Syiler here, and we're back with another Siege of Orgrimmar raid boss guide, this time looking at the second boss of the raid, the Fallen Protectors. And this guide will be useful to people raiding in 10 or 25 man, and there'll also be a short little version of the encounter if you've only got a couple of minutes to learn it, and then later on in the video there'll be a longer, more in-depth version, just in case you need that little bit more information to understand the fight. So, let's get to it. Okay, so we're going to take a short-ish look at the fight. When you first do the fight, you'll notice there's 3 bosses, and they all need to die at pretty much the same time. But every time you DPS one down by 33%, it'll go into a phase 2. So you don't want all 3 of them to do a phase 2 at once. So how you deal with that is DPS 1 down to 66, then the next down to 66, then the final down to 66, and then 1 down to 33, the next down to 33, and then the final down to 33. When they're all at 33%, you can sort of cleave them down and ensure they all die at the same time. So, in terms of phase 1 abilities for each mob, Rook does need to be tanked and keep him faced away from the raid. He'll do a spinning crane kick where he'll run at someone and spinning crane kick, just make sure you move out of that as soon as possible. He'll also stun the tank and do a small frontal cone AoE. Sun doesn't need to be tanked, she'll do Shadow Word Bane, which needs dispelling instantly, and she'll also do a Char Spear on someone, and you just need to make sure you're all spread out so you don't take additional damage from that. And he will gouge the tank if you don't turn your character away, so make sure you turn your character away when he does gouge, and also move out of the venomous poison on the ground. There'll also be like a barrel going out which will be fixated on one player. It'll land where the player previously was stood, so literally just move out of that position. In terms of phase 2 for Rook, he'll summon 3 adds, Misery, Sorrow, and Gloom. Kill Sorrow first, then Misery, then Gloom. In terms of the abilities, Inferno Strike everyone wants to stack up for. Misery does a sort of defiled ground, just move out of it. And Gloom will continuously cast Corruption Shock. Interrupt that if your raid needs to. Next up is He's phase 2, he'll disappear and he'll summon 1 add which will fixate on 1 player. That player will get an extra action button, literally just throw it to the tank who was tanking He, and then that tank will tank the mob until it dies. In terms of Sun's phase 2, she'll cause a big meditation bubble, everyone wants to get inside that meditation bubble, even the tanks. Just make sure you face your adds sort of outside of the bubble if you're tanking. The melee want to kill the small adds, the Char, and the range want to kill the big adds, just mark one up and kill one and then move on to the other one. Once both of them are dead, the phase will end and you'll move back into phase 1. Once they're all down to 33%, you can pop Lust and cleave them all down and kill them and make sure they all die at the same time, and that is pretty much the fight. Okay, so now we're going to take a more in-depth, long look at the fight, and as you'll notice, as we mentioned before, there's 3 mobs in total. There's Rook, He, and Sun, and they all need to die at roughly the same time, or pretty much the same time. But every time one is DPS down by 33%, it'll go into a phase 2, so obviously we don't want all 3 phase 2s to happen at once, otherwise that'll cause a wipe. So how we deal with that is we DPS 1 down to 66, which is Rook, and then the second He down to 66, deal with his phase 2, and then Sun down to 66, deal with her phase 2, and then Rook back on him, DPS him down to 33, deal with his phase 2, and then He, and then Sun, and then when they're all at 33%, you can cleave or dot or multi-dot or whatever you want to do, and ensure they all die at the same time. So if one gets a bit too low, stop on that one, move on to the next, and make sure they all die at roughly the same time. So, in terms of the phase 1 mechanics, you don't need to tank Sun, she's fine, just leave her on her own. But instead you'll want to have Rook tanked, and He tanked, so you only need 2 tanks for this encounter in 10 and 25 man. In terms of healers, I'd say 3 healers in 10 and 5 to 7 healers in 25 man. And once again, there isn't a huge benefit to having more ranged or more melee in this encounter. I'd say an equal balance of both is pretty nice though. So, in terms of tanking, 1 tank picks up Rook, and the things that you need to know about that is Rook will do a frontal cone stun, so you want to face him away from the raid, and it'll do a small amount of damage, so I recommend if you're like a druid or something like that, try and keep backskin for roughly that time. You should be able to pretty much have backskin up for every single one of them. So, just to keep a small defensive there. It doesn't really hurt too much, but it is the bigger damage that you'll take during phase 1. In terms of tanking He, you'll have to move him periodically because he'll put like poison on the ground, and also when he casts Gouge, you need to turn your character away from him. If you're facing him, he'll gouge you, CCing you temporarily, and the mob will aggro onto someone else, probably killing them. So as soon as they cast Gouge, just literally turn your character away and turn back once Gouge is over. Simple as. In terms of other mechanics going out during phase 1, you'll notice Rook, he'll taunt someone, run towards them, and then do a spinning crane kick. So that person ends up being trapped in the middle of the spinning crane kick, and everyone else nearby may be caught in it as well. So I recommend keeping your range consistently spread out. There's no reason to be grouped up in phase 1, so always be spread out, and as soon as the spinning crane kick happens, move out of it, simple as. The other thing that's going to be happening will be like a barrel. Barrel will be thrown out, and it'll be like a swirl on the ground. Just move out of the swirl and you'll dodge the damage. Otherwise it does a large amount of damage and will slow you as well. The other thing that Sun will do is she'll cast a Shadow Word Bane, and that will spread the longer it's on the target. So you want to dispel that as soon as possible. In addition to that, she'll do a Shas, like a Mind Seer, but a Shas Seer, and that will target on one person and then AoE around that person, so that's another reason to be consistently spread out during that phase. Apart from that, there'll be one more ability called Calamity, and that is kind of a raid-wide damage ability. There we go. And that'll basically just damage the whole raid, but it'll also remove Shadow Word Bane. So if you are getting a little bit too overwhelmed, don't worry, there is kind of a reset mechanic there as well. But I would recommend still dispelling Shadow Word Bane as soon as possible. Just if it gets out of hand, just know that that's a thing, you know, it will get rid of it itself. Now, the Calamity will cause about 30-40% of everyone's max HP, so it is a big raid-wide kind of nuke. So try and keep everyone topped up at least sort of 60% before that happens. But there's no reason for anyone to kind of be below that amount, to be honest. Now, when you kill Rook down to 66%, he'll disappear and he'll summon 3 adds. These are going to be Sorrow, Misery, and Gloom. I'd recommend killing Sorrow first, then Misery, then Gloom. They'll all have individual mechanics, and I recommend one tank picks up Sorrow and Misery, the one that was tanking Rook, and then the other tank who's tanking he should pick up Gloom, as Gloom doesn't really do anything to the tank apart from small melee damage. In terms of their individual mechanics, Sorrow will cast a Inferno Strike, and that will target one player, and everyone will need to stack on that player to share the damage. So at least get like sort of over half your raid stacked on that player so it doesn't hurt at all. And that'll be it. She'll cast some small casts. In terms of Misery, whoever's tanking Misery, it'll knock that person back slightly and cause the ground to be defiled. So I recommend kind of tanking them around the outside, but those will disappear when you clear phase 2. So don't worry about sort of having no room. Also, the Gloom will do a consistent cast of Corruption Shock. Now, if you feel the damage is too high, you know, you're wiping due to too much damage, then sit a melee on Gloom and just get them to interrupt Gloom, and you know, continue DPSing Gloom down. There's no harm in Gloom taking a bit of extra DPS during the other 2 dying. So it does help reduce a bit of the damage, and it's useful, you know, it's effective DPS still going out. And once all 3 are dead, as I said, kill Sorrow, then Misery, then Gloom. That's how it worked best for us. Once all 3 are dead, you'll go back into phase 1 and you can start DPSing down he. When he gets to 66 or 33%, he'll go into a phase 2. He'll disappear and he'll summon one add in his place. This one add will fixate on one player, and that one player will then be rooted in place and gain an extra action button. Now, the way you deal with him is I'd literally just click on the tank that was tanking he, that's no longer tanking anything, click the extra action button, and then the mob will focus on that tank. And then just, you know, get that tank to pop some defensives, put like Sacrifice on him if needed, as he will have reduced armor. And then just keep the add on the tank until it dies. And that is literally it. Like, that's the easiest way to deal with it. Instead of throwing it around and trying to kite it and play piggy in the middle, it's better to just get it to sit on the tank that's not doing anything, and then get him to eat all the damage. Once that add's dead, you'll move back into phase 1 and you'll start DPSing down Sun. When Sun hits 66 or 33% HP, she'll move into phase 2 and she'll start doing a meditation. Dark meditation. There'll be a large sort of meditation orb in the middle. Everyone needs to get inside that, and the tanks that are tanking Rook and he, just kind of face them outside of the raid. There's no need for them to be faced inwards, especially Rook, as he'll do that frontal cone AoE, and it can be quite deadly if you're facing it towards your raid. Face him outside the raid, and then literally just get your range to kill the 2 adds that are on the outside of the bubble, and get the melee to kill the small adds that are inside the bubble. And when they're all dead, when the 2 big adds outside the bubble are dead, you'll move back into phase 1. And when they're all at 33%, literally just lust, cleave them all down, and then make sure they die at the same time, and that will be the end of the encounter. So hopefully this guide's helped you out. If you have any questions, don't forget to ask, and look out for more of these Siege of Orgrimmar guides coming soon. Thanks for watching, guys. See ya!